What's up, YouTube? It's time for a review of the new Tremonti album, Dust, out this past Friday, April 29th. So Dust is essentially part 2 of the recording sessions that produced Cauterize, which was Mark Tremonti's second album with his more metal-leaning solo project that he does when he's away from Alter Bridge. Now, they may be separated by 10 months, Cauterize and this record, Dust, but he's made it very clear in the press that they're really two parts of the same body of work. He's also insisted that Dust is not merely the B-sides of the Cauterize record, but he has actually saved some of his favorite tracks for this part 2 here. Now, Cauterize, which came out last June, it was a record that I felt generally positive about, probably overly so in my initial review of it, which you can check out here. But the reason I was singing its praises is because it occupied a real vacant space in rock music, in that it bridged kind of radio rock and accessible rock with stuff that's clearly in the metal category. You got your Breaking Benjamins and your 3 Days Graces, and you got stuff like All That Remains and Killswitch Engage, which, while they're accessible and they may get plays on stations like Octane, are clearly metal bands. And Cauterize, which had the giant rock choruses but also had the thrash and groove metal influence instrumentation, really bridged that hard rock gap. That being said, though, looking back on it, I would probably score it, if I had to listen to it today and give a review today, I'd probably only give it like maybe a light 6 out of 10. It's an album that I really haven't found myself going back to all that much. It had its moments. It had that dark, dramatic closer, Providence. It had the Pantera-esque Tie the Noose, which is another track I really liked. But the riffs were not the most inventive in the world. They were kind of just rehashed thrash riffs, and I felt like a lot of the album fails to achieve that metallic edge that it's clearly going for. But still, I think a lot more modern bands should attempt clean vocals over heavy riffs, because when it fucking works, it's a beautiful thing. So that's probably why I felt so positive about it, because it really occupies that space that I kind of mentioned before, that just not a lot of bands are in. But those thoughts about Cauterize that I have are exactly what makes this new record, Dust, the strangest, weirdest fucking thing. Because I really look at this as like a Use Your Illusion 2. It's part 2 of the same recording sessions. Instead of making a double album, you just release 2 separate albums. But to my ears at least, Dust is such a better record. It's heavier, it's riffier, it's more focused, and frankly, from where I'm sitting, these are all good things. I'm shocked at how much I like this thing. One of the main reasons is that this time around, Tremonti really brings the riffs. I feel like on those last 2 records, there's some cool riffs, but a lot of it just sounds like Metallica B-sides. It's just the same rehash, kind of simplistic shit, and it wasn't giving me that feeling that a real catchy or heavy or grooving metal riff should give you. But on Dust, there's a lot of phenomenal riffing. My 2 personal favorites on this thing are that main pull-off riff that kind of drives the song in the track The Cage, and then that absurdly catchy metal chorus riff in the track Catching Fire, you know, that one. Also worth a mention is the verse riff in the song Betray Me, which is kind of bouncy yet really, really heavy. It's sure to be a live crusher. I'm also really impressed that he's able to pull off singing over it as well as he does, because it's a very busy riff. In general, the album's first 3 quarters has so much going for it. Betray Me is a track that really stands out because of how unrelenting it is. There's no soft breaks or clean passages or any of that jazz. It's just a heavy 4 minutes. And that breakdown at the end really sends the track off, and the first half of the album off, with a real bang. It's one of a few moments where Dust really distinguishes itself from the Alter Bridge stuff in terms of heaviness. The title track, Dust, is the album's central ballad and another shining moment. It just builds so nicely, especially before that second chorus when you get those extra few measures just for the tension to ramp up. You can just tell with this one that this is a guy who had a hand in crafting several of Creed's real radio smashes. The difference is, a song like Dust, it's not corny. It's a dark and brooding song, but it happens to have that stellar song construction that some of those Creed songs did, as corny as they may sound to us now. Tore My Heart Out is another highlight for me, the 6th track on the album. I'm hearing like flashes of In Flames throughout. My favorite section is definitely that really killer breakdown that happens after the solo. It sounds almost Nevermore-ish to me. And the track also has this really intelligently placed melodic solo after the first chorus to kind of break things up. Then, of course, there's the opening 1-2 punch of My Last Mistake and The Cage. I especially like Mark's vocals on My Last Mistake. I feel like in those verses, he pulls off the necessary grittiness. And the track gets sent off with this crazy heavy double bass breakdown. I feel like on a lot of these tracks, he chooses, instead of kind of winding them down, to bring the heaviest section at the end, a la Pantera. Hello, let's think about Domination. Then there's The Cage, which has potentially the LP's most powerful and driving chorus. And this one has a brilliant guitar solo. And I didn't really have much positive to say about the leads on Cauterize. They sounded kind of stale, kind of lifeless to me. But I'm feeling much more positive about the leads on Dust. And the guitar tone is phenomenal throughout. It brings some welcome mids to the mix to kind of contrast those chunky, scooped rhythm guitars and bass. The title track, Dust, has my other favorite lead on here. That little motify run that has like some chromatics in the first ending to it, it has literally become like a part of the song that I look forward to. And I know I'm getting real fucking specific here, but tough shit. If you're curious what I'm talking about, it occurs at the 4-minute mark. Just listen for that motif with a couple little chromatic notes thrown in there that's just really tasteful and a lovely section. Now, there are no flat-out duds on this record, but there are definitely some lackluster moments. I feel like the track Once Dead, while there are definitely some really cool parts, like one of my favorites is those bursts, like those brief bursts of blast beats that happen in the chorus. Very cool. But I feel like this track, it doesn't quite have a heaviness that translates as well as a track like, say, Betray Me. It's got some throwaway verses, some boring, minimalistic lyrics, and kind of a directionless guitar solo. Plus, the bass on here sits way too high in the mix, and it kind of detracts from the guitars. Then track 8, Never Wrong, definitely has a bit of that unwelcome, at least to my ears, radio rock flavor. But the main guitar line is very tasteful, and it's not a bad tune by any means, but it probably is the least memorable. I kind of found myself having a bit of a yawn at the chorus. It's kind of a snoozer. At this point, I kind of feel like I've heard everything that this album has to offer. And really, I have, because the album kind of goes out on a flat line. But it's not easy to forget 7 excellent tracks all in a row. Speaking of radio rock, I definitely appreciate the lack of cringeworthy lyrics on Dust. The Cage, for instance, has some pretty cool lines like, "Crush your soul, bring no other. Let your hatred go. Take your words, they're worth nothing. Let your evil show." Like, to me, that's pretty badass. And the track Rising Storm has by far my favorite lyrical content, so definitely worth reading along to that one. The one exception is Catching Fire, which, I mean, I discussed this a little bit in my Lyric Police video that I did, but the concept of, like, the world being on fire or setting the world ablaze is such a played out lyrical concept. To this day, when I hear it, it just makes my blood boil. But other than that, I mean, the lyrics work on here. It's rock music, let's be honest. The lyrics work, and that's really all a lot of fans ask for. But as I said earlier, I am thoroughly surprised, really pleasantly surprised at how much I'm enjoying Dust. It's some of my favorite rock music that's come out this year. And unlike Cauterize, I anticipate myself coming back to this one quite a bit. I feel like it pulls off that metal-tinged hard rock vibe exceptionally well. It's not perfect, but for some strange fucking reason, these 10 songs in the recording session were significantly ahead of these. Maybe it's a matter of taste, but that's how it's sounding to my ears. And of course, I'm psyched to hear the next Alter Bridge record, which should hopefully be coming late 2016, maybe early 2017. We haven't really heard much. Anyway, Dust gets a 7 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or shoot me a message so we can continue to talk music, and I'll see you guys soon.